Hare Hare
Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama Om Rama Hare Hare
Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Oh, Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Hari Bol Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Haibo, Haibo. Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Try your best. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna devotees, please accept my humble obeisances. All good to Srila Prabhupada. Welcome devotees to our morning Bhagavatam class. This morning we will be discussing from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 10, verses 15 and 16. And the chapter is entitled The Departure of Lord Krishna to Dwarka. And the class will be given by His Grace Dronacharya Prabhu from ISKCON Philadelphia. Hare Krishna Prabhu, please accept my humble obeisances. All goes to Gurudev and Srila Prabhupada.
Jai Gurudev, Jai Srila Prabhupada. Great to see you. Hare Krishna, ISKCON Harrisburg family. It's great to be with you on this wonderful Monday morning. Hope you had a wonderful weekend. Start by chanting Jai Radha Madhava.
Yes.
Jai Radha Madhava, Vallabha Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janavallabha Giri Varadari Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Giri Varadari Yashoda Nandana Braja Janaranjana Yashoda Nandana Braja Janaranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janavallabha Giri Varadari Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Giri Varadari Yashoda Nandana Braja Janaranjana Yashoda Nandana Braja Janaranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Gurudev 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 Jaya Jaya Gurudev Jaya Jaya Gurudev 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 Jaya Gurudev Jayam Vishnupada Paramahamsa Parivrajikacharya Ashotatara Shishima His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jayam Vishnupada Paramahamsa Parivrajikacharya Ashotatara Shishima His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Thakur Maharaj Ki Jai Anantakoti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Prem Skoho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shamakun Radha Kun Giri Govardhan Ki Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai Navadvip Mayapur Dham Ki Jai Ganga Maya Yamuna Maya Ki Jai Bhakti Devi Tulsi Devi Ki Jai Shri Harinam Sankirtan Ki Jai Samaveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai Nitai Gaura Premanande Hari Hari Bo. All glories the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. All glories the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. All glories the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. All glories, all glories, all glories to the lotus feet of Sri Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prabhupada Krishna Atitya Swami Namaste Krishna Padaya Prabhupada Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prabhupada Swami Namaste Saraswati Devi Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Narayanam namaskritam naram chaiva narotamam devim saraswatim vyasam tato jayam udirayit nastaprayeshu abhadreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavati uttama shloke bhaktir bhavati naishtuki. Before reciting Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the very means of conquest in this age of Kali, one should first offer one's respectful obeisances unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Narayan, unto the supermost human beings, Nar Narayan Rishi, unto the goddess of learning, Mother Saraswati, and unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author. By regular attendance in classes on Srimad Bhagavatam, and rendering classes and rendering service to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart becomes almost completely destroyed, and devotional service to the Supreme Lord becomes established within one's heart as an irrevocable fact. So we're continuing our study of the first canto, chapter number 10, where Krishna is departing back to Dwarka from Hastinapur. And we're doing text 15 and 16 today. 15 is just a verse with no purport, and 16 has a purport. So we'll do both. I'll just read through both of them continuously. Mridanga shankya birascha vinapana vago mukha duryanka kantadadya nedur dubayastata. The synonyms: mridanga, sweet sounding drum; shankya, conch shell; berya, brass band; cha, and; veena, string band; panava, a kind of flute; go-mukha, another flute; danduri, another drum; anaka, kettle; ganta, bell; adyaha, others; nedu, sounded; dandubayaha, other different types of drums; tatha, at that time. Translation: while the Lord was departing from the palace of Hastinapur, different types of drums like the mridanga, dola, nagra, dunduri, and dundubi, and flutes of different types, the veena, the gomukha, and biri, all sounded together to show him honor. Text number 16. Prashada shikara rudaha kurunaro didrikshaya vavrishu kushumi krishnam prema vrida samikshana. Synonyms: prasada, palace; shikahara, the roof; arudaha, ascending; kuru, narayaha, the ladies of the Kuru royalty; didrikshayaha, seeing; vavrishu, showered; kushumai, by flowers; Krishnam, upon Lord Krishna; prema, out of affection and love; Vridashmita ikshanaha, glancing with shy smiles. Translation: out of out of a loving desire to see the Lord, the royal ladies of the Kurus got up on top of the palace, and smiling with affection and shyness, they showered flowers upon the Lord. Purport by His Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Shyness is a particular extranatural beauty of the fair sex, and it commands respect from the opposite sex. This custom was observed even during the days of the Mahabharata, i.e., more than 5,000 years ago. It is only the less intelligent persons, not well versed in the history of the world, who say that observation of separation of female and male is an introduction of the Mohammedan period in India. This incident from the Mahabharata period proves definitely that the ladies of the palace observed strict parda, restricted association with men. And instead of coming down in the open air where Lord Krishna and others were assembled, the ladies of the palace went up on top of the palace, and from there paid their respects to Lord Krishna by showers of flowers. It is definitely stated here that the ladies were smiling there on top of the palace, checked by shyness. This shyness is a gift of nature of the fair sex, and it enhances their beauty and prestige, even if they are of a less important family, or even if they are less attractive. We have practical experience of this fact. A sweeper woman commanded the respect of many respectable gentlemen simply by manifesting a lady's shyness. Half-naked ladies in the street do not command any respect, but a shy sweeper's wife commands respect from all. Human civilization, as conceived by the sages of India, is to help one free himself from the clutches of illusion. The material beauty of a woman is an illusion because actually the body is made of earth, water, fire, air, etc. But because there is the association of the living spark with matter, it appears to be beautiful. No one is attracted to an earthen doll, even though it is most perfectly prepared to attract the attention of others. The dead body has no beauty because no one will accept the dead body of a so-called beautiful woman. Therefore, the conclusion is that the spirit spark is beautiful, and because of the soul's beauty, one is attracted to the beauty of an outward body. The Vedic wisdom, therefore, forbids us to be attracted by false beauty. But because we are now in the darkness of ignorance, the Vedic civilization allows restricted mixing of women and men. They say that the woman is considered to be the fire, and the man is considered to be the butter. The butter must melt in the association with fire, and therefore they may be brought together only when it is necessary. And shyness is a check to the unrestricted mixing. It is nature's gift, and it must be utilized. Om Timbarandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Umliyatam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Maha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Karamayam Dadati Swapatantikam Vanchakopatarubhyas Chakripa Sindhuvi Evacha Patitanam Pavanevyo Vaishnavevyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So these two verses give a very, it's very illustrative and shows a very, we can really imagine the scene that is going on here. Of course, no one wants Krishna to leave, but Krishna having to return back to his home, they begged him to stay even longer than he was intending to stay, and he had agreed to. But now it is time to leave. And after begging permission from Maharaj Yudhisthira, he's now departing. And the scene of the drums and the flutes and the horns and the bells, all ringing. We do that when there's a special occasion, to show appreciation, to show honor. Sometimes when we're greeting a great personality, even in ISKCON, some places, you'll see this with Srila Prabhupada. He would arrive on the airport, and devotees would meet him there, and they'd have a big kirtan and, offer flower garlands and flower petals, and sometimes wash his feet. And the same thing, when somebody's leaving, again, you want to honor them and, show something special to them. And the first day of high school for my son, they wanted to put on this big thing for the incoming freshmen. So they, had the marching band out there. It's just to kind of like show them something, you're very special. So it's just a way to kind of to show that. It's a nice way to greet people, as well as to send people off, showing your appreciation. If a visiting guru comes or sannyasi to your center, these types of activities can be done. They come in, they see some type of kirtan. There's a feeling of appreciation, as well as you understand their importance. And then the showering of flowers down. So this is Pushpanjali, right? This is what they were showering flowers onto Krishna. And we get an opportunity to partake in this when we offer Pushpanjali. We can adopt the same mentality of offering flowers to Krishna. And in particular, there's the recognition of the royal ladies of the Kuru dynasty. And why? Because a particular type of behavior is being pointed out. And it's being pointed out for a particular reason. And this behavior should be admired and emulated. It says that the royal ladies of the Kuru dynasty got up on top of the palace, and smiling with affection and shyness, they showered flowers upon the Lord. Prabhupada, he begins in the purport. If we're not familiar with this term, fair sex is in reference to how women in this particular context, it's being referred to women, and he says that shyness is an extra natural beauty. I'll get into that in just a few minutes. And he also points out that this was observed well before. This is a long-standing principle. This is not something that's just been recently introduced in modern times. Modern times being when Islamic influence came east and influenced India and the subcontinent of India. And it's important to point that out. When I first read that, I just kind of skimmed through that point, And then a certain idea, came back into my mind. And so historians, sometimes they associate Vedic times of lacking certain contents. For instance, I heard a devotee recently talking about gardens, and they said, gardens were never introduced into India until the Muslims introduced the idea of gardens to India. And another devotee pointed out, well, when you read Krishna book, you see that there's in the palaces, that there's a very beautiful gardens. So how could that be? So Srila Prabhupada is really pointing out to take these Vedic scriptures as authority, as the descending process, as opposed to history, history and research of kind of modern day, which is more or less a lot of trial and error. They think they've understood a certain aspect of history, but that's always constantly changing. Up to a couple hundred years ago, people thought that the earth was only a couple thousand years old. Now they understand that the earth is much, much long, has existed much longer, but still they don't know exactly how long it's existed. They thought that man, evolved from, apes, and that happened at a certain period in time. So Srila Prabhupada is pointing out this important fact that simply just don't trust material science, observations, through history, certain findings that certain historians throw out there, don't necessarily accept them as fact, even though it may be something very innocent as far as the introduction of separation between male and female, but the overall concept of that things were created during this period of the Islamic influence to the East isn't necessarily true. And Srila Prabhupada points out in this case, it is not true, because we see this idea of male and female restricted association present during these times. So these royal ladies, they, instead of mixing with the crowds that were present to show Lord Krishna honor, they were in a kind of an elevated place upon the roof of the palace, and from there they expressed their affection to Krishna. And as Srila Prabhupada is pointing out, this is an exhibit of their shyness. And as they're smiling, their smiles are being observed by the Supreme Lord. And their activities are being expressed. And this is a gift. It's a gift of being able to be seen as more attractive than actually promoting yourself. So on one hand, you actually have when you try to promote yourself, you want to try to jump into somebody's face, or you want to make sure that you are observed or seen, and you want people to take notice of you. And this is why I think this is why Srila Prabhupada is pointing it out. And there's actually a deeper spiritual context to this, as we'll get into. You want to be recognized. So the first tendency, if you want to be recognized, is that you have to make yourself visible. So you make yourself visible, and then somebody will obviously be able to see you. But there's another way to make yourself recognized. And that is by not trying to become recognized, to become reserved. And that level of shyness is actually more attractive than a person that's basically saying, here I am, I'm right here, can you see me? And it's very subtle. And therefore Srila Prabhupada says that, a sweeper woman commands the respect of many respectable gentlemen simply by manifesting a lady's shyness. So even if a person may not have the best profession, maybe due to their, situations resulting from their previous karmas, that maybe they're either less attractive, they're from maybe a less important family, in the place where even if they tried to be noticed, they tried to make themselves recognized, they wouldn't be so much. But simply by being reserved, they attract the attention of others, especially other men. This is half-naked ladies on the street, so that's an exhibit of come see me, come notice me. A man can look through that, but they can notice that somebody's being very modest and reserved. As the purport goes on, it talks about the difference between a material body and the spirit soul, and how the spirit soul actually gives importance to the material body. And whatever beauty that we see in matter is due to the influence of the spirit soul. So the body is attractive because it is because of the spirit soul. You take the spirit soul out, you have a dead body. And the dead body loses all its attractive qualities. So why is Krishna so attractive? Because Krishna is complete spirit. Krishna doesn't have a material body. It says in the Bhagavad Gita 4:6, although I am unborn and my transcendental body never deteriorates. So he has a transcendental body, a Joapi san avyayatma. It doesn't deteriorate. So it's not like a material body made up of material products that exhibits, creation, birth, old age, disease, death. At death, the soul leaves. For Krishna is all attractive, and therefore there is no difference between who he is and spirit. And actually, for us, in our unconditioned state, we are also, being part and parcel of Krishna, all attractive. But due to our conditioned nature, we've assumed this material body. And in this material body, we're struggling with this identity of being part and parcel of the all-attractive Lord Krishna, being spirit soul, and our identification with our current condition, which is the body that we're in. Each body has a particular family, has particular karmas, that we have. Each body has, a particular identity that we're always struggling with. Male, female, our ethnicity, our educational level, our socioeconomic level, so on and so forth. The Vedic literature is there to help free us from this distinction and reinforce the importance of living in a spiritual consciousness. To do so, the scriptures, they point out certain different levels of behavior that will only enhance our our journey along this path of realizing that we are the soul. So one of them is to not become overly attracted to the externals. The beauty of an outward body, we know to be temporary. The pleasures derived from interaction with senses that are due to interactions of the material body are known to be temporary. Therefore, in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Yehi samsparsas jaboga dukkha yonaya evate adyade vanta kunteya nateshu ramate buddha. That the pleasures derived from the material body, less intelligent people, do not take pleasures in the interaction of material bodies. Why? Because they have a beginning and an end, and therefore the wise do not delight in them. So understanding this, we can resist the attraction of different types of material allurements in this world. Why? Because we know they have a beginning and an end. Ultimately, they will disappoint us. They may feel very good right now, but we are to understand that ultimately it'll bring about some disappointment. However, if we connect on the spiritual level, spirit not having a beginning and an end, the spirit really being the source of the beauty that we see in any type of material situation, we can actually become liberated and free from all the disappointment that is bound to happen in our material relationships. So in order to, as a check, or as an assistance to that, this principle of shyness can be there. So with regards to men and women associating, as stated here, because we are now in the darkness of ignorance, the Vedic civilization allows very restricted mixing between man and woman. So an overly, if we try to force the associations of men and women, if we just do it without restriction, we could run into difficulty. I remember when I first came to, and what is that difficulty? That difficulty is we become overly consumed with bodily relationships. This saying, it used to be very prevalent. I remember devotees used to say this all the time. Men are like fire, women are like butter. You put the man and women together, soon the man will start to melt, as butter will melt in the association of heat. And we have to admit that there's some truth to that. And I remember I said that to one of my a friend that I knew growing up after I first started practicing Krishna consciousness. And I said that because he was saying, he was asking me about different things about the opposite sex. And I kind of quoted this from Srila Prabhupada. And he says, wow, that's a great pickup line. I'm going to have to use that sometime. Men are like butter, women are like fire, and I said, that's stupid. That's not a pickup line. That's the reality of the situation. And that in the association of the opposite sex, you put yourself, and this can go for both women and men. I think a lot of this is being looked at from the perspective of a male, but also, women are also very susceptible to the same. From the opposite direction, but we put ourselves in a place of vulnerability, and that we don't want to do. We don't want to make ourselves vulnerable to any distractions that will prevent us from making spiritual advancement. And shyness is a technique. It's a tool. It's a check that one can prevent oneself from unrestricted mixing, but allows one to still exhibit one's natural qualities of affection. It's nature's gift, Srila Prabhupada says, and it must be, and says it must be utilized. So by utilizing it, one allows oneself to kind of check this tendency to want to allow oneself to become overly vulnerable in the association of the opposite sex, which could ultimately become very detrimental to our spiritual advancement. So another way that we can also apply this principle of shyness is in our spiritual lives and our interaction with Krishna. Krishna, his devotees, the spiritual master, due to the presence of our false ego, not accepting the fact that we are eternal servants and that we are existing for Krishna's pleasure, not for our pleasure. We still linger with this idea that we need to be recognized. This was written about by a lot of sociologists, psychologists. A lot of the world is driven off of this desire for appreciation, wanting to be recognized, gaining a sense of self-worth. And as devotees, we struggle with this. We want to be heard. Sometimes we want to, be seen as a senior. I'm a senior, therefore I should go first. I'm a better devotee, or I know more. I'm of this category. Sometimes I'm a man. Sometimes we want this feeling of recognition, and this is very detrimental to our spiritual life. Why? Because it's really it's contradictory to the nature of the spirit soul. So how does it actually live out? It lives out when one wants to actually be seen. And so in the same way, if one practices this principle of shyness, it can actually restrict that urge and dovetail it in a way in which we apply the principle of actually the intention is not to be seen by the Lord, but for the Lord to be able to see us. Srila Prabhupada talks about this from Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. This is the Srila Prabhupada, speaking in a lecture, November 16th, 1966. He says, "This is the process. Just become submissive and attract the attention of God. Then you'll be successful. Just try to," my Guru Maharaj used to say, that's Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, "don't try to see God. You work in such a way that God will see you. God will take care of you. Don't try to see God. This is the process. I want to see God. Oh, God, please come and stand before me. Oh, just like he's my servant. God is no one's servant. You have obliged him by your love, by your service. That is the process. In that submissive way, always, constantly, without any deviation in Krishna consciousness. Oh, for him, God is very cheap. Although he is not, he is unconquerable. So even though we try to make ourselves visible to God in an external way, that is not the way to actually please the Lord. Bhagavad Gita 8:14, Krishna says that for one who always remembers me without deviation, I am easy to obtain because of his constant engagement in my devotional service. That is what Krishna sees. He sees who is actually thinking of me always. Who is putting others before themselves, thinking themselves a servant? Who is trying to bring others to me? Not necessarily the people standing before saying, please see me, pushing their way to the front. So that thinking that I need to be up front or I want to be I want to be in the beginning. I want to be seen. Why? Because one who's advanced in spiritual knowledge and has some understanding, they understand that Yom Mam Pashati Sarvatra, one who sees me everywhere and sees everything in me, I am never lost to him, nor is he ever lost to me. There's actually intimate relationship between the Lord and his devotees, and it is not based on externals. That wherever the devotee is doing service, the Supreme Lord is observing that. And therefore, they don't need any type of false recognition. They don't need to be seen outwardly. In fact, they act for the most part, unless it's being done, to set an example for some reason, they act, with the principle of shyness, of humility. Not to bring attention to themselves. Now, for the one who is less educated, they think, well, if I don't bring attention to myself, how will people know? And more so, how will God know? And there may even be the aspect of, I'm not really even so interested what God thinks. I just care what everybody else thinks about me. Do we not think that God sees everything? That God witnesses everything? We should know that God is lying within us as a super soul. He's the witness of everything. He's the supreme Lord of all. He knows all past, present, and future. Certainly, he knows the activities that we are doing when no one else sees us. So we shouldn't be driven in this way for recognition. To show appreciation and encouragement, it's okay to recognize others, but for ourselves, we should not seek out that. I remember we used to go overboard in Philadelphia, thinking that if we just overly praised people, and not falsely praising them, but for everything we did. So I remember this was years and years ago. We would just keep tallies of service that people were doing, and the people that were cooking the Sunday feast that day. We used to have congregation members come and cook the Sunday feast before COVID hit, and we would have a running list of everybody who helped, from the person that did the shopping all the way down to the person that made the deity plates, and every once in a while we would leave somebody out, not with any intention, but the person compiling the list, they just forgot. And you could really see who was advanced and who in this understanding, and really who's missed the whole thing altogether. You miss somebody's name, I mean, wow, some people, they just went on fire. We're not coming back to this temple. We feel so unappreciated. You forgot my husband's name, or you forgot my wife's name. She came here, she was here for the last 3 hours, back in the kitchen working so hard. And you think, oh my gosh, what has happened to these people? And then some people, you didn't forget their name. I'm glad they didn't mention my name. I don't need the additional attention. Just rolled right off of them. Others, they're filing formal grievances against the temple. I mean, so we have to be careful with our mentalities because it is out there and is prevalent. And this is just because of our association of being in a material body for so long. It has nothing to do with the spirit soul. But we have to practice it this way. Oftentimes, Jayananda Prabhu, the great disciple of Srila Prabhupada, Jayananda, he was always working and serving in different capacities to help ISKCON and Srila Prabhupada. And sometimes he wasn't personally there with Srila Prabhupada. He may not have been the ones that was always there traveling with him on morning walks. But Srila Prabhupada would always ask, where's Jayananda? How is Jayananda doing? So even though he wasn't personally there, where was Srila Prabhupada's mind? He was thinking of Jayananda Prabhu. So in the same way, we should have that faith that we don't need to tell everything that we're doing. Krishna sees it, spiritual, and therefore the spiritual master also knows. When we exhibit this principle of shyness, we'll find that our spiritual lives actually become more and more enhanced. Our faith will actually grow more and more. And that reciprocation that we may be looking for is actually there, but it's not going to be external. Maybe sometimes somebody will offer some appreciation, but the reciprocation will actually be from within. In the same way, these ladies, royal ladies who were showering flowers down upon the Supreme Lord, they weren't down there face to face with Krishna, but they felt the satisfaction of being up above, exhibiting their shyness. That Krishna, they felt that satisfaction internally, knowing that Krishna appreciated their service. So these are a couple of the takeaways from today's class. If anybody else has any thoughts, questions, or comments, we can share that now. Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much, Rohit, for such a wonderful class, and especially helping to us to remind ourselves how important it is to not be the limelight of service. It's the heart that really means, that is what attracts the Lord, how we are so sincere. So thank you for such a wonderful class. Yes, Mother Geeta, please ask him your question, Mother.
Hare Krishna to all of you. Please accept my humble obeisances, our guys to Srila Prabhupada. First of all, it was a great pleasure to meet you, Dronacharya Prabhu. Thank you for your kind hospitality.
And the pleasure is all mine and all ours at the temple. It was great to be able to see you in person here in Philadelphia this weekend.
Thank you. So I had a question, and I also, with your permission, would like to share a pastime of Srila Prabhupada, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I remember reading from Drops of Nectar of Satswarup Maharaj, and he was saying that Srila Prabhupada was once traveling in the train, and it was going from a small town to another one. And in that train was a husband and wife, and there was this wife who had the parda, as Prabhupada mentions in the purport, parda, which means a veil over her face so that her face could not be seen. And this is what is practiced, especially in small towns and villages, and in some cities also, those who follow the Vedic culture. So there was this young girl sitting there also, and she was trying to pull her veil, try to see her face. And that lady kept jerking her hand away, and this young girl kept doing this. And then when she did that couple of times, then this lady in the parda, she slapped this young girl really hard, like, why are you trying to do something like this? Because she was used to, with that parda, that veil. And Srila Prabhupada said, very good, very good. And he told this young girl, this is the culture, this is the Vedic culture, where this lady is shy and she is covering her face and you being modern, you're trying to pull on that. So I just remember that pastime of Srila Prabhupada. So my question is, this verse number 16 is talking about shyness. So if the fair sex, which is a woman, is going to be shy, then how is she going to preach? If she's going to be, like these ladies who were on top, trying to, have darshan of Krishna from top and shower flowers from there. Because of shyness, they didn't come right in front of him. So now in this Kali Yuga, how can a woman maintain her shyness as well, at the same time be able to preach? Thank you, Prabhu.
When everything's being, thank you for that pastime and the question. And we can also get some contribution from, you can maybe share some of your thoughts on this as well. And the other devotees that are in female bodies can also share. But when we're acting on behalf of the spiritual master, so these principles aren't abandoned internally and also externally. I mean, we still appear in a modest way, but utilizing the things that we have for the sake of spreading Krishna consciousness to others, for the sake of performing devotional service, approaching people as opposed to maybe not being approached or being reserved, but still, approaching people. But the purpose is not to necessarily bring attention to yourself. It's to bring attention to Krishna, Srila Prabhupada's books, introducing people to the holy name. Actually, we find out that people tend to be more inclined to be stopped by a woman than to be stopped by a man. So if you're walking down the street and a woman stops you, just says, excuse me, I would like to share these books with you. It's actually more likely that, because women, why? Because they're innocent. A man is more rough. They're gonna rob me, or they don't have time for them. They're just more, there's a certain level of softness that a woman brings, and this is to a woman and a man. This can be just seen, in book distribution that I've observed. But a woman is doing this, a devotee woman is doing this in order to bring attention to spiritual people to spiritual life, not necessarily trying to bring people to her. And I think that's where the difference is. We still practice the principle of modesty, but at the same time execute the principles of spreading Krishna consciousness, book distribution, Harinam, Sankirtan, Prasadam distribution, by not bringing attention to yourself necessarily, but bringing attention to Srila Prabhupada's teachings. As soon as one starts thinking, oh, they're liking me, they're noticing me, then the perspective has been flipped or switched, and then it becomes about the individual person and their body. So we have to make sure that we don't lose focus, and we keep it on the spiritual level. And when we keep it on the spiritual level, we actually find at that point everything is all attractive. So it's a struggle that we're always fighting, this identity that we have as spirit souls and spirit souls within a material body, and attraction to the body, attraction to the soul. It's always this struggle that we go through. So that would be my thought, is that it's really about understanding the activity we're doing and keeping the focus on the activity we're doing. As soon as we lose that focus, and we start taking the compliments that people may give us to thinking, oh, people are attracted to my material body. Really, we should think, if there's some attraction there, it's really due to the presence of the soul, and that is Krishna. And this Krishna is what I'm trying to give people. Do you have any thoughts on this, Mother Gita?
No, thank you so much. Such a nice description. Good answer. Thank you so much. Actually, Aditi Lata had a question, if you don't mind.
Please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna, Mataji.
Thank you for a wonderful class. It was very enlightening. So I have one question that in today's world, in Kali Yuga, where little girls are mixing with boys as a friends, they start from the very beginning at school. How can we, put this shyness in them, because their barrier is broken from the very beginning? How can we incorporate this?
Yeah, so it's a good question. I mean, you go to, just the culture that we live in, here in America, there's, we don't see this so much. So it's really not really instilled within our culture. So we shouldn't become overly consumed with it, to the point where, because we have to understand that this is where we're kind of living. It doesn't mean that we can't exhibit it in some element or some degree. So it may not be the same degree of execution as it would be, say, in the Vedic times, where maybe it was taught in that way. Maybe the women went to one school, or women were raised a certain way, men were raised a certain way, without a lot of mixing. Now we just see, that's just kind of the way it is. You can, at the same time, when they're out of school, there's certain restrictions that you can begin to make. And then just kind of educating our children as we have it, because when they come back from school, there are ours to, inform, to correct, certain behaviors that they may have learned in school may not be the best. But this element of shyness it's a gift, as Srila Prabhupada mentions here. It's a gift, not necessarily a punishment. And when we look at it as a gift, that you'll actually be able to express affection or express a feeling, but not actually do it in a very overt way of trying to be noticed, then it can actually be seen as an aspect of a good thing, as opposed to just like forcing restriction. It's a kind of a tough one to answer, but going back to this kind of the spiritual principle is that when we think of Krishna first and we try to put others first, we make material self-sacrifices for someone else's purpose or pleasure, instead of putting ourselves first. That is what really we want to teach. So there's social etiquettes that we can also put forward with regards to the various sexes. But the principle, the deep down principle, which will connect to our spirit soul, not just simply our material bodies, is that if we learn to not try to put ourselves first, but enter into the mood of service, putting Krishna first and putting others first so that they can begin to understand Krishna. Not always thinking about my needs, knowing that Krishna will take care of my needs. Krishna, have that faith that actually Krishna, I surrender to Krishna, Krishna sees that surrender. I serve Krishna, Krishna sees that service. So let me not push myself to the front, but actually, allow others to go first. That is an exhibition of shyness. And that actually becomes an all-attractive quality. So by not trying to make yourself attractive, you actually become more attractive. That is the secret. As far as, what can be done socially, I guess there's, different things that we can teach, our children that we want to raise them in. But even with that, if the spiritual principle is there, it'll eventually probably become broken, just because of the world that we live in. But if the spiritual principle of shyness is understood, then naturally the others will follow. Do you have any thoughts about that? Any either Mother?
Thank you,
Mother
thank you, Prabhuji. It's wonderfully explained. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
It's a tough one when you talk about implementation of certain Vedic behaviors in modern times, because sometimes it's so diametrically opposed to what we see in just modern civilization, although we can practice them ourselves, but it's just not so well accepted externally.
Those were very nice questions, actually. Thank you so much for asking. As you were speaking, Dronacharya, I was reminded of, not that I know so much about it, but I've heard a little bit about it, as Mother Janava, Lord Nityananda's wife, that she had disciples. But I believe from my limited knowledge, or, that I've heard about her glories, is that even though she was preaching, but she was very strict with her dealings, if I'm not mistaken, that it was her words that really caught the attention of the people, and how she was able to draw that. At the same time, she was very, I don't know if strict is the word, but she was very, cautious, I think, in how she dealt with different situations. Or, in her preaching service, I was just reminded about that a little bit. Like I said, I don't know so much, but those were the couple of things that crossed my mind as you were speaking. Yeah, like you said, we live in a crazy world where it's like such a, this is like a, butting heads in this crazy world that is so hard to even make kids understand why they have to be shy. And somehow it's so funny, in today's world, the kids, they actually think shyness, they equate shyness to cowardice, being a coward, I think. I don't know if you've come across that. But sometimes I feel, kids nowadays think shy means I have to be a coward. So that's another concern sometimes I face with young people. No, it's and then it goes into the whole explanation. No, a coward is different from being shy, and then we've got to talk about it because of the peer pressure with kids in school. I think they have a different meaning, or they codify shyness to be something negative.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
and it has to be done in a way that is not obviously, self-inflicting either. So if you're being bullied, or you're being pushed around, or you're like, in school, you never raise your hand. So you have a question, but you never raise your hand. Like certain things you have to overcome in order to, in order to kind of protect yourself so there's a difference between standing up for yourself and a show off, right?
Mm.
So it's there's the, you're going to eat, you're going to get served, but yet to push yourself to the front of the line because you want to be the first and you want to get the first dibs, so that's the difference. One is I'm not going to eat and somebody's taking everything. So I'm pointing out that there's some type of injustice there. So that's one thing. I'm being bullied, I'm being pushed around. Excuse me, this is not right, and I have to notify somebody. So that's one thing. The other is bringing attention to yourself for no reason other than to get that feeling of validity within one's life. I'm not being noticed, so therefore I'm going to have to make myself noticed. This could be practiced, but even more so, within when it applies to our spiritual life, because material life, sometimes we have to do certain things in order to get noticed, in order to survive. Like I said, if you see some level of injustice, or even at work, we may have to necessarily make a presentation of such. There we have to kind of let people know if we want to get recognized to get a promotion. Otherwise, they may think you're disinterested. But when it comes to specifically our service, and it really has big implications in our level of spiritual advancement individually as well as collectively as a society, because it's contagious, this behavior. People see, I'm trying to be first, I'm trying to be recognized, I'm trying to be seen. Then others also will say, well, I want to be seen. Why, people start pushing each other around. But when they start seeing this mood of, no, please, you go first. No, please, you go first. When it's time to take darshan of the Lord, is the Lord not seeing everybody? Allow the senior devotees to go first. Don't try to push your way around. Take a lesser position, take a humble position. Krishna will give you so much more than you would have ever thought than just trying to get yourself to be known. Do a service where no one is looking, right? We used to have this thing where people would always want to do the artik for Janmashtami, or they'll be there in the bathing of Janmashtami, and we encourage them. Come sometime, for Mangal artik, and you can bathe, dress the deities or bathe the deities. Oh, I don't think I have enough time to do that. But put me down for Janmashtami. I'll be there for the bathing for Janmashtami, right? Because everybody's looking on Janmashtami. It's on YouTube, it's on, all the pictures will be there. Everybody will see you. But ask the devotees that are there at the early morning hours, or, 12 o'clock midday when nobody's there, and the sweetness of the interaction. So if you really want Krishna, you'll do it at those times where there's not that temptation of being recognized. Go, and one devotee once told me, he says, go at a time and arrange the shoe rack. If things are out of sorts, arrange the shoe rack and no one is looking, and you'll find, Lord Krishna will give you special mercy. But if you do it during the Sunday feast when everybody's looking and they say, oh, Prabhu, you're so humble for taking the shoes. Oh, wow, Prabhu, you're doing such great service. You'll get a little bit spoiled, and you'll start thinking, yes, I'm something special. Externally you'll say, no, I'm just a humble, but inside you're enjoying. Therefore we find, the acharyas, the great sages, is not to bring attention to yourself. Bring attention to Krishna. Bring attention to the spiritual master. And even as leaders, you have to remember that, because a lot of times, being in leadership, you have to be sometimes in the limelight as part of your service, but to constantly deflect that attention to the devotees who are doing, all the devotees who are doing service, the attention to Srila Prabhupada, attention to the deities. So it's an important principle that we have that we can really apply. And if we're able to do it, it can actually become very contagious, and we can help each other overcome one of these major obstacles that we have of trying to be seen.
Such a nice point, Dronacharya. In fact, as you were speaking, Dear Krishna posted a very nice post on chat saying, very nice point about taking darshan of the Lord humbly. Even Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu used to take darshan of Lord Jagannath from the back in Puri. There's a pastime of how he even allowed an old mother to jump over his shoulders to take darshan.
Yeah, that's beautiful. It's right. That's a great example.
Yeah,
that's a great example. And so it shouldn't be, so our eagerness also shouldn't go down. Our eagerness should still be there. So we shouldn't mistake our eagerness with that either. We could still be eager and enthusiastic, just like, I forget her name in the pastime, but Lord Chaitanya would stand at the Garuda Stamba, the pillar at the back where Garuda would sit on, and he would take darshan. And she was so eager that she jumped on his, which would typically be, not conventional. He's a sannyasi, but he understood her eagerness, to see. That's a wonderful pastime. Is there anything in that pastime you want to pull out in regards to this?
Dear Krishna, do you want to say something about it?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu, please accept my humble obeisances. All glory to Srila Prabhupada. No, Prabhuji, I recall that past time when you were bringing up such beautiful points, which are very subtle, but definitely those are the checks for our consciousness. What are we trying to do? Are we trying to impress the devotees by taking darshan, or are we, being humble and in the service mode? Because taking darshan is also a service to the Lord. So thank you for reminding these very subtle points.
Thank you so much for such wonderful points.
One last thing I'm thinking of real quick is,
Please.
when I know it was a shock to me when I first came to the temple and I saw the men on one side and the ladies on the other side. And because going to church, it was never like that. It was, you'd sit with your family and your sisters, and you'd have your sister's friends, and you'd have, and I remember asking, why is that? I mean, I kind of just figured why it was, but they said, because you're here to worship Krishna, not necessarily to mingle and to, and naturally, flirtation and things like that can take place and start happening, and really want to be focused here. And I really respected that. I was like, this is serious. This is really about, it's just not like kind of like a old-fashioned cultural thing. There's a meaning to it, that we really want to be focused during our worship. We don't want to have these temptations and, I guess just vulnerabilities of just, who's looking at me, who's, and I remember soon after that, there was this young lady who used to chant the shlokas, and she chanted so nicely. And every time she would chant, you'd see all the men go like this. Yeah, it just naturally, they would just turn, and like, it's almost like all in sync, they would turn. And you could just see that, yes, this is true. We really have to be careful, because the temptation is there, and we're really there to worship Krishna. So we should be careful about that. We really should.
Thank you so much, Dr. Acharya. Thank you to all the devotees for such a nice questions and discussion, and really helping us to see how we can win the heart of the Lord is not by being noticed, but the Lord will find us based on our service attitude and our mood. Thank you for bringing those nice, wonderful points up. And thank you for all of you for joining us. So, quick reminder, please do join us for this evening's Bhagavad Gita Circle at 6 o'clock. We will continue reading chapter 5. Until then, thank you for a nice discussion. Have a wonderful day. Vanchakrapati Vyascha, Kripasindu Bevacha, Patitanam Pavanebhyo, Vaishnavebhyo, Namo Namaha, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Dronacharya.
Thank you for having me. All glories to all your services. I hope you have a wonderful week. I know that you have the 8-hour, you have a kirtan coming up on Saturday.
Yeah, this Saturday, yes.
Yeah, we're hoping to come. A lot of
Would
devotees
love to
from
have you over, Dronacharya.
Philadelphia. We just came off a really ecstatic kirtan.
Vishaka told me.
She was. It was great seeing her and some of the other devotees from Philadelphia or from Harrisburg come to Philadelphia. I saw them as they were coming in, and it was really ecstatic. I mean, these devotees are just really, really, really special. The love and support they give each other while they're chanting, the chemistry. At the end, they did this spontaneous tribute to Srila Prabhupada. It reminded me of Gurudev. Like at the end,
really,
which when you thought it was done, he would jump up and just, start chanting again and glorifying Prabhupada right in front of Prabhupada's, Murti, and it was so touching and
wow.
Just really beautiful and inspired a lot of people. We heard, when's the next kirtan? Harrisburg. We're there.
We will be here on Saturday. No doubt about that one.
So,
please spread the word around at the Philly Temple too, Dronacharya. We would love to have as many devotees as possible to make it really rocking.
Yeah. No, we'll try to get as many people there as we can.
Great. Thank you so much. And have a wonderful, blessed day.
Okay.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.